What's up everyone, Blue here at Blue Bears Games, and this week I'm super excited to bring you this Commander deck build video. This one is a partner pairing, or a partner Commander deck build, with Virtus the Veiled and Gorm the Great. This deck came about because last week's video on Muldrotha, that went to a customer, and the same customer, who also got the Grand Arbiter Augustine deck build video from about 6 or 7 months ago, had requested a second deck at the same time. So the request was a Death Touch deck, but without Infect, and the reason for that is because she has a situation where her local scene, her local game stores, don't allow, some of them anyway, don't allow Infect. They're banned from their stores, so she wanted something that was Death Touch related without Infect. Originally came up with a different pairing. It was a legendary creature with a choose a background. I didn't like the way the build was going, and the added bonus for me was that a while ago I opened up a Battle Bond booster box, and I pulled Virtus the Veiled and Gorm the Great from it, and I wanted at the time to do a budget build video for the deck, and I just never got to it. So when the opportunity presented itself, I took it. So what does Virtus the Veiled do, other than partner with Gorm the Great? It has Death Touch, which was exactly what I needed, and the added ability of whenever Virtus the Veiled deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half their life rounded up. Really good there. Gorm the Great, not as good. However, it gave me access to green, which I really needed. Partners with Virtus the Veiled, obviously. Has Vigilance, which is great because you can attack and still block, and it's a 2/7. Big butt. Can survive a lot of damage. And then it must be blocked, and it must be blocked by 2 or more creatures available. So, not very helpful for the Death Touch deck, but again, it gave me access to the green, and it actually has some other ways that it can gain Death Touch. So, those are the 2 that I'm going to go over. Let me go ahead and show you what I came up with. So, I'll start with the lands, as always. And remember, we're on a budget. And a lot of the budget, always on every deck in Magic, is eaten up by the lands. So the budget for this deck was $150 max, and this deck came out to $110, so not too bad. So it's about $1 a card. Start with Command Tower, obviously. Overgrown Tomb, because it's in the colors we need, it can come into play untapped. It's a shock land. We've got to check lands. It, again, can come into play untapped, and I tried to do that as much as possible. That's how I came up with Tainted Wood. I like the Tainted lands. They come into play untapped. It can tap to add a colorless, and if you control a swamp, they can add you can tap to add either a black or a green. Really like this card. Some people don't. Rogue's Passage I added because you really want Virtus to get damage in, so why not? Tried to get a couple of things in here that make things unblockable. Encroaching Waste was added because if you've watched all of my other budget build videos, and you should, if you haven't, go watch some. They're really informative and they're really good. They may be a little dry because I'm an informative person, but trust me, the information is really good. I like land destruction because you never know what you're going to face out in the wild. There are problematic lands all over the place, so why not add a little land destruction? And there's a little more in here. Blighted Woodland, because we're in green, I like the ability to fetch lands, get them into play. It takes them out of your deck, puts them in play, makes your draws better later. Really good stuff. Same thing with Jund Panorama. Ignore the mountain part. You can go search for a swamp or a forest, put it into play. And it also comes into play untapped, and you can tap it to add mana, a colorless. Mirrored Landscape, a little worse than that. It comes into play tapped, and that's always a no-no, but sometimes you got to do it. It taps to add a colorless, but then you can also tap it and sack it by paying 2, and go get 2 basic land types that share a land type, and put them onto the battlefield tapped. So you can go get 2 forests or 2 swamps in this deck. Riveteer's Overlook. I actually like these lands a lot. The reason why I like them is because they're a land you can play that can go fetch another land that you may need to fix your mana. And in some instances, the original idea for this deck had the commander from Commander Legends Baldur's Gate that when it attacks, you can take a land from your graveyard and put it into play. So it would have been nice to be able to repeat it a lot, but I like these in decks anyway. They kind of take some of the lands out of your deck so your draws get a little bit better, even if it's minimally. And then the rest are forests and swamps. And what I like to do for everybody is I have in the description of the video below a link to my MTG Goldfish account that's directly linked to this deck. So if you want to see all the exacts, you can go ahead and do so. It's got clickable cards on there, so you can just hover over them and it'll show you what the card is. We're in green. I'm super happy that we're in green, thankfully. So ramp is not that big of a deal. I tried to make the ramp as cheap as possible, and if it was above 2, which it will be, it went and got more than 1 land. So we start with Rampant Growth. I put that in my budget decks, and I like to put that in a lot of decks because it's 2 to cast. You can go get a land, any basic you need. Farseek will only get you in this deck a swamp, but it's good enough. Nature's Lore goes and gets you that forest if you need a forest. It puts it into play tapped. All of them do that. Primal Growth, again, when I said it, 3 to cast, so it's more than 2, so I wanted to be able to go get more than 1. Has a kicker to sacrifice a creature. If you don't kick it, you can go get a basic land, put it into play, not tapped, and then shuffle. But if you pay the kicker, which is to sacrifice a creature, you can go get 2 and put them into play untapped. This deck has a small sub-theme, a couple of small sub-themes. One of them is grading tokens, so that shouldn't be a problem. Far Wandering's another 3 caster, goes and gets more than 1 land if the situation arises. So search your library for a basic land card and put it into play tapped. If you have Threshold, and Threshold means if your graveyard has 7 or more cards in it, you have Threshold. You can then instead search for 3 basic land cards and put them into play tapped, so way more than 1. And then the last 2 are almost identical. It's Cultivate and Konama's Reach. They're both 3 to cast. They both allow you to go get 2 lands, put 1 into your hand and 1 into play tapped. One of them has Arcane. That's about the only difference there. So that's the ramp section. I tried to get as many as I could in there. I don't like the 3 casters, but it is what it is. Up next, we're going to do the creature section. It's the meat and potatoes of the deck. Look how thick that section is. Every creature in here is going to have Death Touch, and if it doesn't have Death Touch, it'll help with the things that have Death Touch. I was originally going to put a lot of 1-to-cast Death Touchers in here. I realized that I liked all the guys that were more than one ability on top of Death Touch. Some of them have 2 more abilities, so I'll show you what I mean. Vampire of the Dire Moon, it's a 1-to-caster, it's Death Touch and Lifelink. Foulmire Knight, 1-to-cast Death Toucher, but it also has the ability to draw a card. Baleful Eidolon, it's 2-to-cast, Death Toucher, has Bestow. Bestow means you can cast it for its Bestow cost and attach it to a creature as an enchantment and give it, what this creature gives it is +1/+1 and Death Touch. What I like about Bestow is it has a 2-for-1. So you get 2 uses out of it. You can enchant something later in the game, obviously because it's 5 to cast a Bestow. And then when that creature dies, this falls off of it, turning into a 1/1 Death Toucher. So I liked that. Gifted Aetherborn, Death Touching Lifelinker. Graveblade Marauder, 3 to cast, 1/4 Death Toucher. When it deals combat damage to a player, though, that player loses life equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard. That's good synergy with Virtus because it can deal damage and then make them lose half their life, and then you can finish them off with a Graveblade, possibly dealing the rest. Midnight Assassin was the worst of the creatures in this deck, I believe, but I liked it for one reason. So it's a 3 to cast, 1/2 with Death Touch, but it has flying. I tried to put as much flying in here as possible because you never know what you're going to face. Usually it's like the Ur Dragon or some kind of flying deck. You want to be able to stop opposing attackers from coming in, and a lot of people like flyers, so... Same thing with Malakir Familiar, so it's a flying Death Toucher, but it also has the added ability with a second sub-theme I have in here. Whenever you gain life, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. I wish it was counters. It wasn't, unfortunately, but it is what it is. What that is a small sub-theme in this deck has life gain. There are things in here. There's life linkers. I have them in here. I have life linkers. I have other ways. So you'll see that coming up right now. Hooded Blightfang. This has a synergy / combo that I'll explain to you at a different time in another video, but I'll give you a small explanation when I come across the second card. It's 3 to cast, 1/4 Death Toucher. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain a life. Small, aristocrat style, not really aristocrat, life drain. And gain. Has a second ability here. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage to a Planeswalker, destroy that Planeswalker. And against certain decks, that can be really powerful. Atrax is out there, and people like to do Super Friends. So that ability is really good. It helps destroy a lot of different things. This deck can just do a lot of destruction on a lot of different things. Vampire Nighthawk, flying, Death Touch, Lifelink, probably one of the best black creatures in the game. Nighthawk Scavenger, also flying, Death Touch, and Lifelink. Its power is 1 plus the star. The star is equal to 1 plus the number of card types among cards in your opponent's graveyards, all your opponents. So instant sorceries, artifacts, enchantments. This guy can get quite big, but not too big. It has a cap. Isareth the Awakener gives me another small sub-theme of Graveyard Recursion, so it's 3 to cast, 3/3 Death Toucher. When it attacks, not when it deals combat damage, but when it attacks, you may pay X, and when you do, return target creature with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield with a corpse counter on it, and the corpse counter just means that if the creature would die, it just gets exiled. Agent of Fates, some small sub-theme here. There's some, not sub-theme, there's synergy. There's some good synergy here with a couple of the cards I'm going to show you in the Sorcery and Instant section. It's a 3 to cast, 3/2 Death Toucher with Heroic, and its Heroic is that whenever you cast a spell that targets it, each opponent sacrifices a creature. Again, lots of death and destruction in this deck. Embodiment of Agnes is actually a cool card in this deck. It's 3 to cast, it's a 0/0 flying Death Toucher, but it enters the battlefield with a +1/+1 counter on it for each different mana value among non-land cards in your graveyard. I did the count on this. It has roughly about 20 different mana costs, or mana values. So this thing can get really big really quickly. Bone Picker was pretty cool. It's a 4 to cast, 3/2 flying Death Toucher, but it costs 3 less to cast if a creature died this turn, and this deck is going to have a lot of death going on, so you're most likely going to be casting this for 1. Deathgaze Cockatrice, flying Death Toucher. Liliana's Reaver, here's where the token sub-theme comes in. It's a 4 to cast, 4/3. Good stats for the mana value, or the mana cost. Has Death Touch, of course, because that's the theme of the deck. And then whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card, and you can put a 2/2 black zombie creature token on the battlefield. So create a 2/2 tapped zombie token. Keepsake Gorgon, this one's an interesting one. It's 5 to cast for a 2/5 Death Touch. A lot of the Death Touchers have big butts. I don't know why, but they do. It has Monstrosity 1, and when it becomes monstrous, destroy a non-Gorgon creature an opponent controls. Most creatures aren't going to be Gorgons. There aren't a lot of them, so that's pretty cool. So a lot of death there, too. Harvester of Souls is a card draw engine for you. 6 to cast, 5/5, Death Toucher. Whenever another non-token creature dies, you may draw a card. So there's going to be a lot of things dying, and you're going to draw the cards because card draw in this game equals fuel. Why not? Ambush Viper is probably one of the second weakest of the creatures in the deck, but I liked it because it's a 2 to cast, 2/1 flashing Death Toucher. So that surprise, here you go, you got something attacking, I have nothing on the board, here you go, a 2/1 Death Toucher can now block it, as long as it's not flying. It doesn't have reach. However, Thornweld Archer does, and so does Deadly Recluse. Both of them I liked in here because they can block flyers even though they don't have flying. Hornet Nest was a good one too. 3 to cast, 0/2 Defender. Whenever Hornet Nest is dealt damage, create that many 1/1 green insect creature tokens with flying and Death Touch. So it doesn't have flying, it doesn't have Death Touch, but it creates them. Another Reach Death Toucher with Kessig Recluse. This is the other part to the synergy / combo that I was just talking about, and I'm going to pull the card up. So the synergy that this card creates is with Hooded Blightfang. So I checked with a friend of mine who is a judge, and this does work. So I explained earlier that the Blightfang, whenever a creature you control with Death Touch attacks, each opponent loses life and you gain a life. And Sereth is a 4 to cast, 3/4 that says other tapped creatures you control have Death Touch. The way that the rules of the game work allows this synergy to actually go through. It also has other abilities like other untapped creatures you control have hexproof, and then you can pay 1 and tap it to untap another creature or land you control. So they do actually synergize. I will explain it in a video later. Hopefully this week, I'm going to get together with him. He's in the beginners group. He's one of the mods there, and he told me this 100% works, and I will try to get a video together to explain how that works. Moving on, Acidic Slime. So a 5 to cast 2/2 Death Toucher. When it enters the battlefield, you can destroy an artifact, an enchantment, or a land. This is the second land destruction card that's in the deck. I really like to have that in there just so I can cover all bases. Hornet Queen, 7 to cast 2/2 Flying Death Toucher. And when it enters the battlefield, create 4 1/1 insect creatures with Flying and Death Touch. I really wanted to cover the ability to not get attacked because people really do not like attacking into Death Touchers. You win no matter what. So your 1/1s die, but they also kill their 5/5s. It's really nice, unless they have the Indestructible. The Poor Man's Craterhoof Behemoth is End-Raze Forerunner. I did it for budgetary reasons. I don't have any Craterhoofs lying around. This helps you end the game by giving your creatures... So it itself is a 7/7 Vigilance, Trample, Haste. And then when it enters the battlefield, other creatures you control get +2/+2 Vigilance and Trample. I haven't explained this yet, so I'll explain it now. Vigilance. Trample with Death Touch is really good. The synergy there is that the way that Death Touch reads, or I'm sorry, the way that Trample reads is that it deals enough damage to kill its blocker, and then the rest tramples over to the enemy, or to the opponent. And with Death Touch, you only need to deal 1 damage to be lethal, so the rest can trample over. So good synergy there. That's why this is in here. It's actually really good in this deck and a lot of other decks, especially if you have Death Touch. Cheville, 2 to cast Death Toucher with it's a 1/3. At the beginning of your upkeep, if your opponents control no permanents with bounty counters on them, put a bounty counter on target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls, and then, from there, whenever a permanent an opponent controls with a bounty counter dies, you gain 3 life and draw a card. So this deck does a lot of killing things because there's a lot of Death Touchers on the board. There's also other ways that I'll show you in a little bit. So basically, you're going to end up being able to use this as a quasi-draw engine. So really good there. And then the final creature, really good creature. One of the better ones in the deck. 4 to cast 2/3, reach Death Touch. It's Poison Tip Archer. Whenever another creature dies, each opponent loses a life. That doesn't mean just yours. It could be your opponent's too. Remember, you're sitting back with Death Touchers. You're attacking with Death Touchers. Something's dying. That or they're taking the damage. Most people will probably block Virtus of Veil because of that second ability, but things are going to die, and you're still going to be able to drain life on people. All right. Anyway, up next. So I like destruction in this deck. I added as much as I could. I explained to you earlier. So what I like is being able to control the board a little bit. I have bite cards in here. Fight cards are cards that you have 2 creatures that you target. One of them's yours, one of them's your opponent's, and they deal damage equal to their power to each other. Bite cards only let your creature deal the damage. You have Death Touchers. They synergize well with Death Touchers because no matter what you hit, unless it has Indestructible, it will die. Anyway, start with Master's Rebuke. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature you don't control or Planeswalker. Remember I had Chevelle here earlier? This, with a Death Toucher with Chevelle out, equals you're going to probably get the guy who has the bounty counter on it, draw cards, gain life. Again, sub-theme of life gain, sub-theme of card draw. You get the idea. The worst version of Master's Rebuke is Rabid Bite. Does the same thing, but not to a Planeswalker and at sorcery speed. Spinning Wheel Kick. This one's a good one, too. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to each of X target creatures and or Planeswalkers. So you pay the double X. And to explain double X, so some of the people, like I have a group I'm a mod in, the beginners group on Facebook, and a lot of times they ask what double X means. I see this question all the time. Double X just means you have to pay 2 mana for each 1 for the value of X. So if you pay 2 into it, you get 1 for the X. If you pay 4 into it, you get 2 for the X. That's all that means. It's not some major mystery. It's just some people have a problem understanding the double in the halving of it all. Anyway, that's how that works. If you need to know more, hit me up. I'll let you know. Anyway, it can deal to creatures or planeswalkers and its X targets, and if you target a Death Toucher on your side to do it, they all will die. Clear Shot, same thing. It's a bite card. It gives the creature +1/+1. It's pretty simple. I have Artifact and Enchantment Destruction here. Nature's Claim. They gain life. You don't really care. If you hit with Virtus, you're going to have that anyway. Natural State hits... I like the one that casts mana cost 2. Destroy target artifact or enchantment with converted mana cost 3 or less. That's a Soul Ring, Arcane Signet. You know, there's a lot of things out there that can really hurt. Return to Nature, I like that it had 3 options, and all 3 are viable if you need them. Same thing with you find a cursed idol. You can create a treasure token if you want. Venturing in the dungeon doesn't matter in this deck, so I don't choose that ever. Beast Within destroys a permanent, and then its controller gets a 3/3 green beast token, but that's really minimal. You can Death Touch it off the board. Abrupt Decay. Can't be countered. Destroy a non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Again, lots of things in this game are devastating that cost 3 mana or less. And then Putrefy. Destroy an artifact or a creature and it can't be regenerated. Pretty simple. I think it's like 9 or 10 destruction spells in this deck. I like targeted removal. It's really nice. Up next, quasi card draw and some card draw. So green and black. Black has the ability to draw cards if you spend life. I didn't go that route with this one. I tried to do the stuff that does this. So look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest in the bottom of your library. That's a theme here. That one does it. Seek the Wilds does it, but you can also choose a land, and it's only 4 cards you can look at. Harmonize is actual card draw and probably one of the best green draw spells in the game. You draw 3 for 4. And then You Meet in a Tavern was a unique one. This one does 2 things you want. You can either look at the top 5 cards of your library, reveal any number of creature cards from among them, and put them into your hand, or you can give all your creatures +2/+2 until end of turn. You want both. Unfortunately, you can only choose one. That actually also turns into the next section, which has Overrun, which is very similar to You Meet in a Tavern. So it gives all creatures +3/+3 and Trample. Trample with Death Touch, as I explained before, very powerful. Asceticism, very good utility. 5 to cast enchantment, gives your creatures, this means just gives them hexproof. And then you can regenerate them. You can pay 2 and regenerate a creature. With Death Touchers, that's pretty unfair. Lurking Predators, one of the better enchantments in green. I like a couple of enchantments in green. This is one of them. So it's whenever an opponent casts a spell, it doesn't matter what kind of spell. It could be an artifact, an enchantment. It could be an instant, a sorcery. You get to reveal the top card of your library, and if it's a creature, you can put it right onto the battlefield. Really good for cheap, free, like some of the more expensive stuff can come onto the battlefield for free. And then if you don't have a creature that you reveal, you can put that card on the bottom of your library. Quasi Scrying in green. So you either put a creature on the battlefield or you scry. Really good stuff there. Journey to Eternity was a really interesting one. I like this a lot. It's a 3 to cast enchantment. When you enchant your own creature naturally, and then when that creature dies, you return that creature back to the battlefield, and then this flips over into Adzal, Cave of Eternity. It is a land that now taps to add a mana of any color, but it also has Graveyard Recursion in it. So for 5, so a green, a black, and 3, you can return a creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield directly. So now you really, like when you have this set, you don't really care if your stuff dies because you'll just bring it back. I liked the idea of that. All right. Deathcap Ritual, more card draw. You always need card draw. It has Morbid. At the beginning of each end step, if a creature died this turn, you may draw a card. This deck, again, has lots of death and destruction it wants to cause. So drawing a card almost every turn, including your opponent's, sounds like a good idea to me. Lightning Greaves. I like this. I want to show you this little thing. So here's how I like to use this. It gives your creature haste and shroud, so it protects them and makes them able to use their abilities or attack immediately because it equips for 0. So here's what I like. Turn 2, you Lightning Greaves. Turn 3, Virtus the Veiled. Equip it, and then attack. That on turn 3 can be devastating because you're halving their life. Remember, Commander, you start at 40, so taking half of that away immediately really sets them back. And then I added a second equipment that helps protect your commanders because you have 2 of them, so why not? And this one actually fits a good part of the deck as well. So it gives them Shroud as well, so they can't be targeted, and also makes them unblockable. With Virtus the Veiled, that's pretty damn good. So I put them in there. I added Quiet as Spike because it's literally the equipment version of Virtus the Veiled. Has everything. It makes a creature basically Virtus. So it gives a Death Touch and makes it so that when it deals combat damage to them, they halve their life. I mean, it's pretty simple. It's a. I want to say it's Virtus on a stick, but I mean, technically, aren't creatures that have abilities that are spells something on a stick? I don't know. You tell me. And then a win con, and I say win con loosely because it's not really a win con so much as a makes target player lose the game con, and I don't really know what that term is. Anyway, it's a 1 to cast equipment. You can equip it to a creature. It gets +2/+0 and Death Touch, so synergy there. So it gives something like Gorm Death Touch, who doesn't have it, for 8. And this is a more end game kind of thing. Remember, we're a combat-based deck here, so you got to find combat-based ways to win where it's not dealing 40 damage. So until end of turn, Vorpal Sword gains whenever the equipped creature deals combat damage to a player. That player loses the game, and it equips for 2 black. So again, not really win con, but like more target player loses the game con. I don't know what that's called. And then the last section we're going to go over, I have 3 Planeswalkers. They're all Vraskas. Vraska is the Queen of Death Touch. She has win cons in here. She deals with Death Touch. She herself gains a version of Death Touch, so I'll go over them. I want to mention that here's a mana cost or a mana value that doesn't exist in this deck other than here. So one of the 20 or so different mana values for Embodiment of Agonies. All right, so 4 to cast comes in with 5 loyalty counters. Whenever a creature you control with Death Touch deals damage, only damage, to a bite card works here, to a player or Planeswalker, put a +1/+1 counter on that creature. That's really good in this deck. That actually synergizes well. She has a down tick to be able to put into play a 1/1 black assassin creature token with Death Touch. Again, more synergy. That also has whenever this creature deals combat damage. Damage again, not even combat damage. Damage to a Planeswalker, destroy it. So kind of similar to another card we have in here. Vraska, the Golgari Queen. Again, she is the Death Touch Queen. 4 to cast comes in with 4 loyalty counters. Her uptick is that you may sacrifice another permanent, and if you do, gain 1 life and draw a card. So where that synergizes here is, I told you earlier, very small sub-theme of being able to create some tokens. What's her name? She creates a token, so you may be able to sacrifice that, but there are other ways to put tokens into play. You don't have to sacrifice anything. You can just uptick her for 2 and do nothing. But if you do sacrifice something, it's life gain, sub-theme, card draw, sub-theme. See where that goes? Has a down tick of 3, destroy target non-land permanent with converted mana cost 3 or less. Good removal. I don't really see that being used much because you want to get her to her ultimate as fast as possible because it's again, quasi-win con. Her ultimate is you get an emblem with whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So kind of like the Vorpal Sword. Only now, it can't be removed. Emblems currently don't have a way to be removed, so I like that as a alternate style win with combat damage. Because remember, we're a combat-based deck. And then the last card in the deck is Vraska the Unseen. So it's 5 to cast, 5 loyalty it enters with. The first uptick is until end of turn. Whenever a creature deals combat damage 2 Vraska, destroy it. So again, quasi form of Death Touch. It doesn't have to deal damage to anything. It's basically Death Touch without having to deal damage. I really like the synergy and the way that this deck flows. First down tick, destroy a target non-land permanent. A little bit better than the other Vraska. The other Vraska has to have the permanent has to have a mana value of 3 or less. This one doesn't care. And then the ultimate, really cool ultimate. Create 3 1/1 Black Assassin creature tokens with whenever this creature deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. So yet another way of not really a win con, but a target player loses condition. So I really like the way that flows. This deck is really a fun deck to play. So I've actually sent the deck list over to the customer. She liked it. I really like this deck. I actually think that this deck came out much better than I was anticipating. So I'm really happy with it. Currently, I am in the midst of 4 other personal deck builds or requested deck builds for people. They are all Commander decks. But if you have any requests, it can be Commander or a regular 60-card deck. I'm available. I have these 4 deck builds to go, but once I'm done them, I'll be free to do them. So keep that in mind. And other than that, go look at some of the other videos I've built. I have a unique way of building, so take a look at some of them. So that's the video I have for you this week. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, or just want to talk about the deck or any of the other decks and videos that I create, you can go ahead and contact me at bluebearsgames.online on Facebook. You can email me at bluebearsgames@gmail.com, and I'll get back to you when I have an opportunity. Or you can leave a comment in the section below, and I'll get back to you in that way. And then if you want to talk further after that, you can go ahead and contact me one of the other 2 ways. On top of that, if you're looking to help support the channel, there are a couple ways you can do so. The first way is actually just out of generosity. You can go ahead and do some donations to me. And the way you can do that is through PayPal at paypal.me/BlueBearsGames, at Venmo at BlueBearsGames, or through Cash App at $BlueBearsGames. The second way that you could help support the channel, this one actually gets you something for your money. You can go ahead and take a look at all the decks that I've made, and you can make a purchase of 1 or 2 or maybe even 5. I have 60-card decks available for sale, and I also have Commander decks available for sale. So if you're looking at them, you can go ahead and take a look at any of my stuff on the Facebook page or through the Facebook Marketplace. They're all available there. You can see the logo that you need to look for, and all those are available for purchase. You can contact me at any time, and we'll go ahead and talk about how you can acquire one of those. And the last option is the freest of the 3 options. You can do me the favor of subscribing to the channel if you haven't done so already. That way, when I get to my 1,000 subscribers and 4,000 watch hours, somebody else will be paying for the bill. You can also like the video. Apparently, the analytics show that the more people who like your video, the more viewed it gets. So that would help me as well. Or you can share it out on your social medias, whatever one you have, and other people will eventually start subscribing and watching more videos. So all 3 options are great and will help support the channel. That is my time for the week. I want to thank you for watching. Please join me again next week for another deck build video, and I will see you all then. Have a good week.